involved in church, I have always had a hard time figuring out where I fit in. The church that I grew up in until after I graduated college did not have a special needs ministry at the time. They have a thriving one now though, thanks to these trainings from Joni and Friends. Back then, I was used to being the only one with a disability everywhere I went, so it was not a big deal. I got involved with all of the student ministries. I so wish my pastors had training like this when I was in middle school. I had a very hard time socially at school, and my junior high group at church was like my safe place. Unlike at school, the kids were at least nice and polite, and I found much needed comfort in the worship time, but I still didn't feel like I could tell the pastors my struggles because I was the only one with a disability, and they didn't really know how to relate to me, and my speech was a barrier. I want to help change that for other kids. Don't get me wrong, I did have a few small group leaders who made an effort to build relationships with me, but on the whole, I always felt like I was on the fringe of all the activities. The older I got, this disparity became even more apparent as the pastors started really encouraging the students to find ways to serve and use their gifts for the church. A lot of their suggestions involved going on short-term mission trips to places like Rocky Point to help build homes and things like that, which weren't feasible for me. I can only remember one instance where I was able to contribute to any type of ministry project. The college group put on this creative arts coffee house event one year, and it produced a book of poetry from the students. I believe I submitted 2 or 3 pieces that all got very positive responses. It wasn't too long after that, however, that I graduated college and the whole young adult ministry moved to a totally different campus. At that point, I felt completely invisible. But one Sunday, I ran into a classmate from high school who'd also been in the student ministry while coming out of service. She suggested I check out Highlands because they had a cool young adult ministry led by one of our old pastors. I knew Highlands was a lot closer to my house, which would be much easier, so I took a step of faith and went to check it out. I noticed a huge difference from that first night. People were welcoming, rather than just polite. I soon met Missy, the special needs ministry director, and understood the difference in attitude. Missy's leadership had helped to make acceptance and assumed competence part of the culture at large of Highlands. It has been my church home for nearly 15 years now. I've never actually attended any of the special needs programs because they are predominantly geared toward youth with autism and other cognitive disabilities, except for my 3 years on the special needs dance team. But the accepting atmosphere has allowed me to seek out areas where I can truly use my gifts to serve the church. For a while, I helped with media stuff occasionally, and then I became a small group co-leader in the women's ministry in 2019. Last year, when Missy became my mentor for discipleship, she began pushing me to step into an independent leadership role by starting a biblical support group for adults with physical disabilities. She kept nudging me, "Brooke, we need this and we need you to do it." I was nervous, but finally agreed. Right now, the support group has 5 active members and has been a blessing to lead. I'm beyond grateful that Highlands is committed to being an irresistible church, to put it in Johnny's terms. Therefore, the best advice I can give you is actually from her. It's the connection point for 1 Peter 4:10, the Beyond Suffering Bible, which says, God gives every believer a spiritual gift to be used to serve others. Disability does not negate that truth. Even gifts that seem less noteworthy demonstrate God's character. The church needs to make a special effort to provide opportunities for people with disabilities to use their gifts and talents. When we do so, God is glorified, and the body of believers is edified. In order to put this in action, do what my Ms. Wheelchair Arizona platform says, always assume competence. A typically able person should strive to approach a person with a disability the same way they would any other. Get to know them by asking questions, seeking out common interests, and listening to their experiences. If cognitive challenges do become apparent, find out what accommodations need to be made. Even many of those with cognitive limitations can sense when someone is being patronizing. As Missy always asks in her volunteer trainings, what's more harmful? A typically able person making the presumption that a person with a disability can understand everything said to and happening around them when they really can't? Or someone noticing another person's disability and jumping to conclusion that their physical limitations automatically makes them not cognitively aware? Giving people the benefit of the doubt is always the best practice. We are all created in God's image. He has given each of us specific gifts for a dedicated purpose, regardless of disability, and that makes us all worthy of human dignity and meaningful communication. Thanks so much again for having me today. If you have questions, feel free to ask. My assistant Emily will help clarify my speech. Also, please stop by my table on your break or afterwards if you want to know more about my ministry, books and presentations, or if you would like a special Always Assume Competence t-shirt.